In 1979, he adopted 9 black girls. See how they are now, 46 years later. The year was 1979, and Richard Miller's life had narrowed to silence. His wife had been gone for 2 years, and the house they once dreamed of filling with children was still and hollow. At 34, Richard spent most evenings at his kitchen table, staring at the same cracked wallpaper, listening to a clock that seemed to mock him with every tick. People in town said he should remarry, move on, start over. But Richard didn't want to start over. He wanted to keep a promise and once whispered as she lay in a hospital bed, frail and fading, "Don't let love die with me. Give it somewhere to go." That promise led him one rain-soaked evening to St. Mary's Orphanage on the edge of the city. He hadn't planned on stopping there. His truck had simply broken down nearby. But when he stepped inside, seeking a phone, the muffled sound of babies crying drew him down a dim corridor. In one small room, cribs were crammed together in rows, and inside them, 9 baby girls, all dark-skinned, with wide brown eyes and fragile arms, reaching for anyone who might lift them. They weren't crying in unison. It was a chorus of desperation, uneven, aching. A young nurse noticed his stare. "They came together," she said quietly, left on church steps in the middle of the night. No note, no names, just 9 infants bundled in the same blanket. Richard couldn't move. 9. How could someone leave 9 lives like this? The nurse lowered her voice further. "No one wants them. People come in willing to adopt 1, maybe 2, but never all. They'll be separated eventually." That word separated stabbed through him. He thought of his wife's promise of love, given a place to grow. He thought of the way and always talked about family not being blood but choice. When Richard finally spoke, his voice trembled. "What if someone took all of them?" The nurse almost laughed. "All 9? Sir, no one can raise 9 babies. Not alone, not without money. People will think you're crazy." But Richard wasn't listening anymore. He walked closer to the cribs, and one of the babies, tiny fists clenched, stared up at him with a startling intensity, as if she already knew him. Another reached a hand toward his sleeve, and another smiled, gums showing. Something cracked open in him. The ache he carried shifted into something heavier but alive. Responsibility. "I'll take them," Richard whispered. The paperwork was a war. Social workers called it reckless. Relatives called him foolish. Neighbors whispered behind curtains, "What's a white man doing with 9 black babies?" Some muttered darker things. People warned him about money, about ridicule, about ruining his life. But Richard didn't flinch. He sold his truck, his tools, even Anne's jewelry. He begged for extra shifts at the factory, patched roofs on weekends, took night work at a diner. Every dollar went to formula, diapers, cribs he built by hand, the house filled with chaos, sleepless nights, bottles boiling on the stove, laundry lines sagging under 9 sets of baby clothes. He learned to braid hair with clumsy fingers, learned which lullaby calmed which child, learned to count their breaths in the dark when fear kept him awake. And with every day that passed, the whispers grew louder. Parents at the park pulled their children closer. Strangers stared in grocery stores. Once a man spit at Richard's feet and said, "You'll regret this." But regret never came. Instead came moments. The first time all 9 laughed at once. A sound so pure it rattled the walls. The sight of them crawling in a line down the hallway like a living train. The quiet weight of 9 tiny bodies asleep against him after a storm knocked the power out. They were his and he was theirs. Richard knew the world would never stop questioning, never stop doubting. But as he looked at the 9 little girls who filled his once empty house, he also knew one thing with unshakable certainty. He had given love somewhere to go. The years that followed tested Richard in ways no man could have prepared for. Raising 1 child was a challenge. Raising 9 alone was a war. His hands were always calloused from extra shifts. His body sore from lifting, carrying, chasing. But his heart grew stronger. Each girl developed her own rhythm, her own spark. Sarah was the loudest laugh in the house, while Ruth clung to his shirt whenever strangers came near. Naomi and Esther were mischievous partners in crime, forever sneaking cookies from the counter. Leah was tender, always the one to place her small hand on her sister's shoulders when fights broke out. Mary, quiet but fierce, learned to walk first. Hannah, Rachel, and little Deborah were inseparable, their games filling the house with endless noise. To the outside world, they were the Miller 9. Some whispered the name with awe, others with suspicion, but to Richard they were simply his daughters. Still the weight of scrutiny followed him. At school drop-offs, mothers whispered, "What's his angle? Why would a white man adopt 9 black girls?" Some accused him of using them for attention. Others questioned his morality, even his sanity. He never responded. He just kept showing up with bagged lunches, braided hair, shoes he'd saved weeks to afford. Money was scarce. He often skipped meals to stretch groceries. He patched the same shirts until fabric thinned to threads. At night, when the house finally fell quiet, he would sit at the kitchen table, bills stacked like enemies, his head in his hands. And yet he never let his daughters see despair. When they looked at him, they saw strength, and that gave him strength back. There were moments of grace, too. Moments that stitched him to them tighter than blood. Birthdays with homemade cakes collapsing in the middle. Christmas mornings when 9 pairs of hands tore open gifts wrapped in old newspaper. Nights spent under the stars. All of them squeezed onto one blanket in the backyard, listening as Richard told them stories about and the mother they never knew, but who lived in every sacrifice he made. And slowly, against the odds, the girls grew, not just taller, but rooted. They excelled in school. They held each other up when the world tried to tear them down. And always they came home to Richard. But time is merciless. By the late 1990s, his hair had grayed, his back bent. The girls, now young women, began to leave. College, jobs, marriages. The house that had once rattled with cries and laughter grew quiet again. On the night the last daughter moved out, Richard sat alone on the couch, staring at the framed photo of all 9 as toddlers lined up like pearls on a string. He whispered into the silence, "I kept my promise, Anne." Decades passed. The girls flourished. Teachers, nurses, artists, mothers. They built lives, but they never drifted far. Every holiday they returned, filling his modest home with noise until the walls seemed to swell with it. And each time Richard sat back, eyes wet, marveling at the miracle he'd been foolish enough and brave enough to choose. Now 46 years later, in 2025, Richard sat in a grand armchair, the lines on his face etched deep, his body frail, but his eyes still clear. Around him, 9 women, no longer girls, but radiant, confident women in matching cream-colored dresses, surrounded him. Their arms rested on his shoulders, their faces pressed close, smiles blooming like flowers. Photographers clicked. The world watched. A headline blazed across news outlets. In 1979, he adopted 9 black girls. See them now. But for Richard, it wasn't about headlines. It was about this moment, the circle completed. The babies no one wanted had grown into women the world admired. And he, the man everyone doubted, had lived long enough to see it. Grace, one of the daughters, leaned close, whispering, "Dad, you did it. You kept us together." His lips trembled into a smile. "No," he whispered back, his voice fragile but steady. "We did it. Love did it." The room fell into silence as each daughter leaned in, pressing against him. 9 strong women encasing the frail frame of the man who chose them when no one else would. And for the first time in 46 years, Richard allowed himself to cry without hiding it. Because the promise was not only kept, it had blossomed. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.